Great to be here. Today, I want you to think about the kind of story you want to have at the end of your life. What do you want people, and most importantly, what do you want God to think about you at the end of your life? And now, with that thought in mind, we will be in James chapter 5, verses 1 through 6. Come now, you rich, weep and howl for your miseries which are coming upon you. Your riches have rotted, and your garments have become moth-eaten. Your gold and your silver have rusted, and their rust will be a witness against you, and will consume your flesh like fire. It is in the last days that you have stored up your treasure. Behold, the pay of the laborers who mowed your fields, and which has been withheld by you, cries out against you, and the outcry of those who did the harvesting has reached the ears of the Lord of the Sabbath. You have lived luxuriously on the earth, and led a life of wanton pleasure. You have fattened your hearts in a day of slaughter. You have condemned and put to death the righteous man. He does not resist you. We can learn quite a few things about the rich in this passage, one of which is how their end and eternal state will be a rude awakening. The rich will come to the realization that everything that they ever had could not provide them any satisfaction. They will come to realize that virtually their whole life was worthless because they wasted their time pursuing things that won't last. In addition, the rich will also be judged for how they treat people. If they have exploited people in any way, there will be consequences for it because God will hear the outcries of the exploited and will judge the rich for it. The rich are also claimed to overpower or put to death innocent and noble people. Now, given all of this, what can we learn, and how can we make sure our story is not their story? First, we should look to Jesus for our fulfillment rather than our possessions. America is a wonderful country, and I'm grateful for it. The fact that we as a people have the opportunity to make something of our lives and be successful is a blessing. However, with these freedoms comes great temptations. And one of the biggest temptations that you and I face is that the pursuit of the American dream can distract us from what we've been called to do as Christians. Now, this is not to say that trying to become successful and provide for your family is a bad thing. However, once we look to our possessions for fulfillment, we will run into a dead end. Because at the end of the day, if we look to our possessions for our fulfillment, we will only be satisfied in this life only. When James said, "You have stored up your treasures in the last days," he was referring to the period before Christ's return. In other words, he is saying that if you are looking to rack up on material things, you are investing in something that will cease to exist. That's why Jesus said in Matthew chapter 6, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves do not break in and steal." One thing to notice in these words from Jesus is how temporary and easy it is for things to be taken away from us. Moth and rust can easily destroy the things in life that we have. And if it's so easy for these things to be destroyed, what is the purpose of trying so hard to get those things? Inevitably, those things will fail us in the end. And we should ask ourselves, why would we pursue an agenda like that we know in the end won't last? I'm speaking to myself as much as I'm speaking to you, because there are many things in this world that we are told we will find fulfillment in. However, every single time we try to get fulfillment from those things, life has a way of reminding us of the insufficiency of those things. Whether it be payday, that new shirt you bought, or that awesome time with friends that you had, these things are fleeting. Therefore, you and I as people would do best to find out another way to find satisfaction. And to do that, we need to look to an unchanging source of contentment that will not be destroyed by rust. The one thing that we hear throughout Scripture is about how central Jesus is to our contentment. When Paul writes to the church of Philippi, he credits Jesus as their reason to his contentment. He is able to be satisfied whether he is rich or poor. It's interesting to me how he said that in whatever circumstance he found fulfillment. The world today will a lot of times say that if you're not happy with your life, go get what you want and exercise, gain the acceptance of other people. However, Paul does not say any of those things. In fact, he says he found contentment that goes beyond gaining those things. This should encourage us because it means that you and I don't have to waste our bank accounts to be genuinely happy with life. The second thing we can learn from this is that we should focus on spiritual things. Jesus told us to not store up for ourselves treasures on earth, but treasures in heaven. In other words, instead of trying to make a whole bunch of money and getting a whole bunch of stuff, we should try to follow Jesus instead. And we should try to pursue that. And the way we can do that is by going for a godly life. And what does that look like? Well, gaining treasures in heaven could look like something like spending more time in prayer, serving, and helping the poor. Those treasures in heaven that you gain through living a godly life cannot be taken away. And even if all of your belongings burn to the ground, nobody could ever destroy the treasures that God will give you.
Right.
When you think about it, spending time following Jesus is the safest and greatest investment we can make, because we can invest in spending time with him and know that our efforts won't be in vain. Lastly, we need to be mindful of how we treat other people, especially those who are not as well off as we are. In this room, we probably have various levels of financial situations and things like that. However, the one thing that remains constant throughout is that there's probably someone out there who has less than you. How do you treat that person? Are your eyes focused on only your needs, or do you see the needs of those people around you? In this life, we have the opportunity to use our money and influence in a way that brings honor to God. We notice in James that the rich man was exploitive of the people who worked for him. In many cases, this person took advantage of those people, and because of that, those people were legitimately hurt. The rich people also didn't stay true to their word because they withheld the money they were supposed to give to those people. Instead of doing the right thing, they felt that they were better off living their lives for their own enjoyment. And as Christians, we are called to live different. Now, does that mean that you and I can't have fun at all? It doesn't mean that. Christians can have fun because joy is one of the fruits of the Spirit, and that's one of the expectations that God has when we get saved. If our life